What's up guys, ATCZ here, welcome back to Yu-Gi-Oh! Deck of the Day. Today we have an update on one of my favorite decks of all time. This deck got such good support in Phantom raids. Phantom Knights are finally becoming a tier 1 deck again with the inclusion of Bardiz coming off the ban list, especially with the new support. This deck has its tools back to be able to combat the meta, and it has cool new combos, has a lot of new abilities to do, going first and going second, a lot of utility, and this deck is just so much better than it ever was before. So this is the new deck post Phantom Rage with all the new cards. We're going to show you all the cards you need to play and how each one works. So before we begin, if you enjoyed this video, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming videos. And now let's get to the deck profile. So to start off with the old Phantom Knights, we play 3 Phantom Knights of Ancient Cloak. This card, the more spells and traps that include the Phantom Knights in their title come out, this card becomes a lot better. And I think the new rank up is actually worth playing, so this is why Ancient Cloak is so much better now, because before you would only search monsters with it or Shade Brigandine, but it was not the best thing. But now you have actually a card that can give you a lot of disruptions with just one card. So Ancient Cloak is really good. And it also has a secondary effect that you can switch it to defense mode and increase the attack of a dark monster you have by 800 points. It's not the most relevant effect, but in some scenarios where you want to maybe deal with a Dragoon that has a boost and you have a monster with 3500 attack, let's say you summon Dark Rebellion with the Ragged Gloves, so it's a 35, so you need a little bit more attack points in order to run over that Dragoon. Next up, we have 3 copies of Silent Boots, arguably the best of the old ones because it special summons itself when you have a Phantom Knights on the field, and you can banish it from the grave to search a Phantom Knight spell and trap. This can also search the rank up, but this can also search Fogblade, which is very important, and I think you should be maxing out on both of these. And I am maxing out on 3 copies of Ragged Gloves. I've seen a lot of people cut this maybe to 2 or 1. I still think maxing out on all the level 3 Phantom Knights we used to have is still very important because they are the most free discard outlets for your Torn Scales. Otherwise, you will be forced to discard something you don't really want to, because even if discarding a Burning Abyss, if Torn Scales is on the field, it's not very optimal. So I think you need to open Torn Scales with another Phantom Knights, and Ragged Gloves can be any Phantom Knight because you can banish from the grave to send either a monster or a spell or trap from the deck to the grave. You can also send the traps to get more revival effects. So I think Ragged Gloves also has a lot of utility, and it is very important in running over Dragoon because it boosts the monsters that it's under by 1000 points. So if you just normal Ragged Gloves, special as Silent Boots, and overlay into Breaksword, Ragged Gloves will make Breaksword activate the effect of gaining 1000 attack, and your opponent has to negate and destroy the effect, because if they don't, then Breaksword will just go to 3000 attack and you will just crash with Dragoon, and then Breaksword will special summon back 2 Phantom Knights and we continue from there. But even if they destroy Breaksword with Dragoon, Breaksword will keep bringing back more Phantom Knights, so you can do more plays, so it's like a win-win situation no matter what your opponent decides to do. And for the new Phantom Knights, we have 3 copies of Phantom Knights of Torn Scale. This card is absolutely insane. This is basically a new Dark Grepher for the deck, but it's even better because not only does it discard a card to send a Phantom Knights card from your deck to the grave, but also can bring itself back from the graveyard when you banish a Phantom Knights from your grave. This card is absolutely amazing. It's a starter, it's an extender. This card does everything you need to do. Just this card with any card in your hand can end on a Phantom Knights of Rusty Bardiz, an Appaloosa, and 2 set Fogblades, which just by itself is really good, and that's not considering any kind of extenders you might have in your hand. So your combo can extend even further by summoning something like Requiem, or maybe even more stuff with Masquerena. The card is always better when you draw it with a lot of Phantom Knights, and this is something that the deck had a problem with before. Drawing a lot of Phantom Knights cards, especially with spells and traps, was not very optimal because you didn't have a lot of ways to get them out of your hand aside from Silent Boots, but this card actually gives you the option of sending these cards to the grave. So that's why I think maxing out on all of the old ones is not a problem for this deck, because you play 4 copies of Torn Scales with Reinforcement of the Army, so it's really good. And next up, we have 1 copy of Stained Greaves. Just 1 copy because this card is not the best card. It's something that you need to get access to in some weird hands. First of all, this card special summons itself from the hand if you special summon a Phantom Knight, and also you can banish this from the grave to special summon a Phantom Knight from your hand. So this is another card that helps you unbrick those full Phantom Knight hands, and it's good if you don't have anything in your hand. Let's say if you open the Ragged Gloves, an Ancient Cloak, and a Foolish Burial, you can send this to the grave to special summon both of them from your hand, and that means you will not have used your Silent Boot, so you can get it later, because otherwise you would have to Foolish for an Ancient Cloak. An Ancient Cloak would search a Silent Boot, so not only do you lose a special summon of Silent Boots to unbreak yourself, but you also are forced to use the search of Ancient Cloak for your Silent Boots instead of something like the rank up, which helps you extend your plays even further. So this is why I think just playing this 1 copy is really important. I also play a small Burning Abyss package in the deck. I'm not playing Dante or Beatrice. These are just here to give you more rank 3 extenders, and this is something the ban list helped with as well. We have 3 copies of Tour Guide from the Underworld, really good starter. You either want to see this or your Tier Scale. Tier Scale is more vulnerable in something like Heavenly Spheres because it doesn't activate on summon. So if your opponent bounces your normal summon, then it's pretty hard to get around that. But with Tour Guide, even if your opponent does something to her, unless unless they negate and destroy her, which is basically the same. So you can just special summon a Burning Abyss from your deck. So I played 2 copies of Graph and 2 copies of Seer. These are here just to give you more monsters. Seer will give you access to Bardiche more easily, and then you will bring back your Cherubini to have more fodder for your Appaloosa, which is something that the combo revolves around. So you just summon your Tour Guide, special your Graph. These two go into Cherubini. Graph will special summon back your Seer, actually from the deck, and then your Cherubini will send one of your Phantom Knights from the deck to the grave, and then you can go into Bardiche with these two, and Seer will bring back your Cherubini. So with these, you have a Bardiche that you haven't used its effect, so you can send another Phantom Knight to set a spell and trap, and then you have 2 Phantom Knights in your graveyard, so you can use their effects to extend your plays and summon Appaloosa or even search more cards. So just Tour Guide is a really good starter, and like I said, she's not as vulnerable to cards like Heavenly Spheres or maybe Charles if you just pop your normal summon. Then yeah, this is the problem with Torn Scales. This is why I try to play a few extenders that help deal with this problem. So let's go to those extenders. We have 1 Jackalope and 1 Tsuchinoko. I decided to play extenders that do not rely on me having more monsters on the field in order to get them on the field. Cards like Psychic Wielder or Psychic Striker revolve around you having a monster already on the field, and this is the problem, like I mentioned. If they deal with your normal summon, and if that normal summon was not Tour Guide, then you don't have anything on the field to special summon a Wielder or a Tracker. These cards, however, can be summoned whenever you want, so even if you discard them, they will get you another monster on the field. Either Jackalope will special summon Tsuchinoko from the deck, or Tsuchinoko will special summon itself back from the grave. Also, these help you unbreak your hands if you draw another handful of Phantom Knights, so you have a lot of ways to deal with a hands full of Phantom Knights. This is why I said again, you need to run 3 copies of Ragged Gloves because it gives you more options with cards like this, because a good discard with a danger means that you're going to get a lot of advantage. And I play 4 more extenders. First, 2 Kagemucha Knight. This helps you chain your Tour Guide so it doesn't get ashed, so it has that advantage to it. And it's also something that it doesn't matter if your opponent bounces your normal summon, you just normal summon something, then special summons from your hand right away. So it's a level 3 monster you can have on the field even if your opponent disrupts your normal summon. And 2 copies of Junk Forward, because you can special summon this before you commit to your normal summon, which is basically the same thing, except it can chain block your Tour Guide, but still a really good card. And I play 3 copies of Ash Blossom. I decided to play Ash over Veiler. I know Veiler is a little bit more impactful right now because of Anaconda, but the problem with Veiler is that it's a level 1. There are some scenarios where summoning this Ash Blossom can get you plays if you have absolutely nothing. You can just special a Junk Forward, normal summon the Ash, and that's Cherubine right there. So yep, that can happen too. For the spells, you don't need to play a lot of. Play 1 Reinforcement of the Army, basically any Phantom Knight, 1 Foolish Burial, same thing, but can also send Burning Abyss with the inclusion of the package in the deck. 1 Call by the Grave, because sometimes 1 Hand Trap can be very detrimental. If you summon Tour Guide, your opponent ashes, then you have to have one of those 6 extenders in order to be able to play. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to do much. And 1 copy of Rank Up Magic Phantom Knight's Force. This card is much better than the old Rank Up Magic. We used to use the old Rank Up Magic for Azathoth, but now that Azathoth is banned, this card doesn't really do anything. This one, however, doesn't require the Xyz monster you're racking up to have 0 materials. So if you just summon a Rebellion with Breaksword's effect, which is very easy to do because of Bardiche, because you just summon your Breaksword under your Bardiche's arrow, Bardiche will pop your Breaksword, Breaksword will bring back 2 as level 4 monsters, you will overlay them for Rebellion, and then if you use this, you can summon your Dark Requiem, and this will give you a lot of monster negates because Dark Requiem negates and destroys, and it's not once per turn effect, and also when every Titan does that, it can bring an Xyz monster back from the grave. So this is a really good card, and it also deals with Megalogia Zeus, because Zeus is not once per turn, but the problem with Appaloosa negating that was that Appaloosa is once per chain. Requiem is not once per chain, so just 1 Requiem on the field with 3 materials is enough to deal with Zeus if your opponent just summons a lot of Xyz monsters and then a Borbo on top of it because they're playing the Megalogia Zeus Zodiac deck, so you just deal with that with just 1 card. And for the traps, we have 3 copies of Fogblade, still a card worth maxing in this deck because it's a Fiendish Chain that is searchable, and also a Monster Reborn. 1 copy of Phantom Knight's Wings, because this card is another Reborn effect that you can use in their same turn to use a Fogblade. Unfortunately, the grave effects of those Phantom Knight traps are once per turn, so even if you have multiple Fogblades in the grave, you will not be able to use them both. So you just need this as an extra extender, and with Torn Scales, it's not really a brick. Its field effect is kind of if it just boosts a monster with 500 attack permanently, and the turn you use it, the first time that monster will destroy by battle or effect, it is not destroyed. Not the worst effect, but still not something you want to use ever. Basically, you just want to keep this for a discard for Torn Scales. And 3 copies of Infinite Impermanence, because it's another card that can stop pretty much anything and doesn't trigger TDT. And for the extra deck, we have 2 copies of Breaksword. This card is really good going first as well because of the Rusty Bardiche. Like I said, you just summon it under the arrow, destroys itself, and then you bring back 2. So you don't have to your opponent to have a monster or a card on the field to be able to use Breaksword's own effect to destroy itself. You don't need to. Also, this card is like the insta out to Dragoon if you have a Ragged Gloves and a Silent Boots, like I said. which is why I think this card is really good, because it's really good going first and going second, and it gives you a lot of options. You need to play 2, no, you don't need 3, just 2 is enough. To Levier. Levier is a really good card, and if we get the Utopic Future Dragon that the OCG has got for quite a while now, it's the one that you overlay on top of a Utopic Future, maybe Levier is a good play at 3, but for now you don't really need 3, 2 is perfectly fine, because Levier is an extender that gets you back your resource from the banish, because once they're banished they don't do anything, but when you put them back into the grave, then you have more searches, and if you summon 2 copies of Levier, you would be able to go into Utopic Future and then on Utopic Future Dragon, but unfortunately we don't have that yet. The deck is not still at full power, but once it does, then this deck is actually going to be a very good tier 1 contender, especially if we get a good ban list. Next up we have 1 Dark Rebellion, because you need to be able to rank up. This is the monster that you special summon after you use Breaksword's effect, and then you rank it up into Dark Requiem, because this monster is insane. It is not once per turn, so you can just have 3 negates in 1 turn, negates and destroys, and every time you do that you get to special summon an Xyz from the grave, so it gives you more monsters of the field in order to be able to OTK during the next turn. And I am playing 1 copy of the new Arc Rebellion Xyz Dragon. This card is really good at dealing boards. This is basically the anime effect of Rise Falcon when it was boosting itself with all special summon monsters your opponent has, and if it has a Dark Xyz monsters material, it also negates the effects of all other face-up monsters on the field, so most of the time it will have a Dark Xyz monster, because you will be using the rank up under your Dark Rebellion, because there's no other way to special summon a monster that requires 3 level 5 monsters. You cannot hard summon this, not in this deck, so you just rank it up, and then you can basically have a monster that has insane amounts of attack points and also negates your opponent's entire board. For the Link monsters, play 1 Cherubini. With the Burning Abyss monsters, this card is way more useful. You were going to play it in a pure Phantom Knights, but still this card is insane in this build. 1 copy of Masquerena. You can do a lot of stuff with Masquerena, because you can trigger effects during your opponent's turn, because Unicorn is a good card in this deck. The discard you don't mind, because you can just discard something that will give you advantage during the next turn, or you can special summon Avramax, which some decks cannot deal with. 1 Nightmare Phoenix, 12 some back row, 1 Nightmare Unicorn. These 2, like I said, are especially good in this deck, because any deck that can support the discard outlet is very good when you're playing with Nightmares. 1 Rusty Bardiz. This card being off the list, I don't know how long it will be off the list, hopefully for a long time, just enough for this deck to see some play in the meta, but this gives the deck such a boost. If we didn't have Bardiz, the deck would not be what it was right now, because you wouldn't be able to pop your Breaksword turn 1 so you could summon your Requiem. It would lose a lot of utility and a lot of power as well, so this card is insane for this deck. And for the Link Force, play 1 Appaloosa, which is very easy to summon the combo, because you bring back your Cherubini with your Seer, 1 Boreal Sword to be able to go for the OTKs, and 1 Avramax. Like I said, whenever I have the space in my extra deck and I play Masquerena, I always try to include 1 copy of Avramax, because there are some decks that just Masquerena Avramax is basically impossible to deal with. If we had Utopic Future and Utopic Future Dragon, I think I would cut Masquerena and Avramax for these 2, and maybe I would find space for a 3rd Levier as well, but until we get that, we'll have to wait and see how the deck runs. So yep, that's the deck, guys. If you're a fan of the Phantom Knights, this deck is for you. It has become so much more powerful than it ever used to be, and it's a very fun deck. So if you enjoyed it, please give us your thoughts on the list. If you have any more suggestions, I would be very pleased to hear you. This is one of my favorite decks, so it can only get better, and I think that this deck can become tier 1 eventually. So yep, if you enjoyed this video, guys, give it a thumbs up, subscribe to the channel so you don't miss our upcoming content, and we'll see you next time.